Let's bring you this discussion now. The National Prosecuting Authority says strong political intervention is needed to fast-track the extradition of the Gupta brothers from the United Arab Emirates. Speaking at a media roundtable yesterday, the Director of Public Prosecutions, that's Advocate Shamila Batohi, said the MPA has unsuccessfully tried to meet with its UAE counterparts to find each other on this extradition request. You'll remember last year, a UAE court declined South Africa's bid to get the Guptas back in the country. Let's get you more on the story now. We're joined by Gary Eisenberg. He's an extradition law expert. Gary, it's great to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed for coming onto the channel.
Sure.
You know, when we talk about, and this is something that Shamila Batohi mentioned yesterday, the fact that extradition is a complicated matter. What complicates it?
Well, it's a complicated matter when it doesn't work in your favor. Otherwise, especially you're talking about in the UAE, it signed numerous extradition agreements. It has a unit of the prosecutorial authorities and the judicial authorities that are very used to dealing with extradition matters and mutual assistance matters. And out of all countries, extradition matters are dealt with relatively elegantly in the UAE. So I think what Shamila Batohi is extremely frustrated about is how little she and her colleagues understand about what went wrong. And I think that's where the complication really does lie, at that political level.
And I suppose what you need in that context is for the authorities in the other country to be forthcoming about exactly what went wrong and how you can rectify your application.
Well, we must remember what was reported before the matter went to court. The prosecutorial authorities of both jurisdictions were liaising, were meeting, and assured each other that their extradition application was totally compliant and ready to go. And it turns out that the Court of Appeal in the UAE rejected it because it was of the opinion that one of the required arrest warrants was not live. It was invalid, and therefore the extradition application itself was to be rejected on that very technical ground. So I think we're talking about a political aspect that is not being properly addressed, and Advocate Batohi has invoked the necessity of our president becoming involved. And the question becomes, why hasn't President Ramaphosa stuck his neck above the parapet thus far, when the claim of 500 billion rand is the quantum of thievery which allegedly took place? Why hasn't the president risen to the occasion? That's really the million-dollar question at this stage.
Or the $14 billion question, Gary, when we talk about state capture. Batohi also says, you know, without this kind of political push, there's very little that the NPA will be able to achieve. I mean, what does that political push look like, Gary? I understand that the Deputy President Paul Mashatile is in fact in the UAE, or he will be in the UAE quite soon. What would that look like when we say political push?
Well, firstly, enough pressure has to come to bear on the political will to assist South Africa, either to prosecute the Gupta brothers in the UAE, which I thought they said they would do, because money laundering, after all, is a crime in the UAE itself in terms of domestic law.
Right.
No such prosecution is followed domestically there. And second of all, what has stopped the South African government from resubmitting an extradition request in terms of UAE law and in terms of the agreement in existence between the two jurisdictions? And what has, as I said, prevented the president from becoming involved right from the top, looking at the quantum that allegedly has been stolen?
Yeah.
We don't have the answers.
Yeah. I mean, this case has dragged on for years and years, hasn't it? We thought at one stage we would get the Gupta brothers back to South Africa to testify at the state capture inquiry. We know that that didn't happen. And obviously there's a big issue around the NPA's credibility insofar as its ability to deal with a case like this. I just want to say, for the sake of our viewers, that in fact the Deputy President and the Justice Minister travelled to the UAE this week specifically to ensure its cooperation in the matter. So I'm sure we'll get some kind of feedback on the issue at some point. But Gary, is the option there, given that there is jurisdiction for the UAE to prosecute this kind of crime, these types of crimes, for that prosecution to happen in that country?
Well, then that's a question of political negotiation. And I'm afraid to say, even though I'm a mere extradition lawyer, I don't think it's sufficient for Justice Minister Lamola and the Deputy President to be around the table with the authorities in that country. I think the President should be involved, and why the President hasn't summoned Ambassador Al-Hameli, the UAE ambassador to South Africa, for a very intimate, forthright meeting thus far, I don't know. But in order for the UAE authorities to be encouraged, to be nudged, to be taking more action, mutual assistance, doing something to be seen to be assisting the South African government to redress what has occurred at a gross national level. This is something that I think the President needs to work at personally.
Yeah, certainly. Gary Eisenberg, let me thank you for your time this afternoon. Gary is an extradition law expert, and certainly Advocate Shamila Batohi saying that there is no willingness really to assist South Africa on behalf of the UAE. She says it's an issue that depends on political will.